The man dubbed the godfather of the vast right-wing conspiracy, who donated hundreds of millions to right-wing think tanks, who created entire organizations to investigate the Clinton presidency, who assigned a reporter to spend years trying to prove that White House counsel Vince Foster had been murdered at the behest of the Clintons, who a quarter century ago answered a question from a reporter from the Columbia Journalism Review by calling the reporter, "You blanking communist blank." He is now in our fourth story in the countdown, on the verge of endorsing Senator Hillary Clinton for president. And with a primary coming up 3 weeks from today in his state, she has given no indication she would reject it. This may be April Fool's Day, but sadly this is no practical joke. Richard Mellon Scaife, having already reconciled with former President Clinton last year, sat attentively at Senator Clinton's right-hand side as she answered questions from the editorial board of his newspaper, the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, last week. The same paper that as recently as 2002 published an article on the prospect of a Clinton candidacy that noted, quote, "While Vince Foster's family and friends may still mourn him, his death and the scandal that still clings to Hillary may save the country from the mistake of her campaigning for the presidency." And yet 6 years later, Mr. Scaife has almost nothing but praise for her. I will now read most of the editorial Scaife himself wrote for his newspaper in the appropriate voice, with translations as necessary.
Hillary Clinton walked into a Pittsburgh Tribune-Review conference room last Tuesday to meet with some of the newspaper's editors and reporters.
Possibly because the devil was on vacation.
She declared, "It was so counterintuitive, I just thought it would be fun to do." The room erupted in laughter. Her remark diffused what could have been a confrontational meeting.
There aren't a lot of jokes around the Tribune-Review, at least not ones that don't involve people in wheelchairs falling down flights of stairs.
More than that, it said something about the New York senator and former First Lady who hopes to be America's next president.
Something like, she's willing to take an endorsement from a man who has tried to tie her to a murder.
More than most modern political figures, Senator Clinton has been criticized regularly, often harshly, by the Trib. We disagreed with many of her policies and actions in the past. We still disagree with some of her proposals.
We don't like her opposition to human sacrifice, for instance.
The very morning that she came to the Trib, our editorial page raised questions about her campaign and criticized her on several other scores.
Like Vince Foster in the Whitewater investigation, whether or not we should hold these presidential elections or simply appoint a Republican king.
Reading that, a lesser politician, one less self-assured, less informed on domestic and foreign issues, less confident of her positions, might well have canceled the interview right then and there.
Or one with self-respect.
Senator Clinton came to the Trib anyway, and for 90 minutes answered questions. Her meeting and her remarks during it changed my mind about her. Walking into our conference room not knowing what to expect, or even perhaps expecting the worst.
And somehow avoiding the alligators and the rotating knives.
Took courage and confidence. Not many politicians have political or personal courage today, so it was refreshing to see her exhibit both. Like me, she believes we must pull our troops out of Iraq and to refocus our attention on other threats, starting with Afghanistan.
Then Iran, South Korea, Russia, China, the Japanese, the Spanish, and the ever-dangerous Tahitians.
Does all this mean I'm ready to come out and recommend that our Democratic leaders choose Senator Clinton in Pennsylvania's April 22 primary? No, not yet anyway. In fairness, we at the Trib want to hear Senator Barack Obama's answers to some of the same questions and to others before we make that decision.
For instance, he might just cut to the chase and sell his soul right away, rather than hold out like she did.
But it does mean that I have a very different impression of Hillary Clinton today than before last Tuesday's meeting, and it's a very favorable one indeed. Call it a counterintuitive impression.
Or call it counter to everything we and she have ever said we believed in. And an opportunity for us to still get the nominee we in the lunatic right-wing fringe think we stand the better chance against. An excellent opportunity.